Princess Saltharine Alderake, Sally for short, grew tired of boring and repetitive routines inside the castle walls. As she hopes to see something new and exhilarating, a horde of ogres saves her the trouble. With the bloodthirsty creatures threatening the kingdom, Kibitsu Mikoto, aka Peach Boy, grants the royal knights a work break and single-handedly annihilates the enemies. Despite the dangers of the outside world, Sally relinquishes her royal duties and sets off on an adventure of a lifetime. Unbeknownst to the king, Sally will awaken her power that will save her countless times, but will pose a threat to innocent lives. Episode 1. Sally's epic adventure begins when she bumps into a rabbit-looking creature while traversing the forest. Although she tries to turn a blind eye, she eventually helps the exhausted harefolk. Introducing herself as Frau, not long after Sally's first encounter with a demi-human, she continues her journey. To return the favor, Frau volunteers to be her escort. Upon arriving at their destination, a villager goes frantic at the sight of Sally's company. At once, the man drives them away, declaring that demi-humans are their mortal enemies. Fortunately, their second attempt to enter the village worked after Frau wore Sally's raincoat. Once inside, they come across the village chief, who offers them free food and shelter. While Frau hides in her room, Sally learns about a certain traveler who murdered multiple ogres that once attacked the village. Needless to say, she knows that it was Mikoto. The next morning, an ogre suddenly appears in the area. With the distraught villagers around, Sally decides to approach it until a strange feeling takes over her body. While she's frozen in fear, Frau makes her grand entrance and effortlessly defeats the enemy. Despite a demi-human's heroic act, the chief asks them to leave. As the duo steps outside the village, the Knights of Rimdarl greet them, more specifically, arrest them for interrogation. Much to their relief, Hawthorne, the commander of the Knights, releases them immediately after admitting that their detainment was a wrongful arrest. Walking down the street, a sudden explosion puts Sally in a state of panic. Shortly, two high-ranked ogres come into view, Set and Meki, who appears to be responsible for the surprise attack. Soon enough, Sally and Hawthorne come face-to-face with the giant walrus. For the second time, Frau intervenes, but unfortunately she's no match for her new opponent. As Frau slowly accepts her death, Sally, with a psychotic smirk, cuts the ogre's hand off. There and then, it is revealed that there's more than one Peach down the Riverside from the old Momotaro story. Episode 2. Outside the castle walls, Meki gets taken aback when she meets a suspicious stranger. Thinking that she might have just met the rumored demon hunter, Meki finds herself in hot water. As soon as she recovers her strength and the chit-chat is over, the boy suggests settling things between them once and for all. Back inside the kingdom, Sally shares the same menacing expression as Set prepares to deliver the decisive strike. To his shock, his cannon blast did not even leave a single scratch on her body. With a single slash, Sally sends Set to the afterlife. Meanwhile, Meki fires her eye cannon again after giving in to the boy's taunting. Just like Sally, he remains unscathed, leaving Meki in disbelief. Introducing himself as Mikoto, he puts Meki out of her misery by removing her eye and horn. Sometime later, Hawthorne takes Sally and Frau inside the cell where Meki is imprisoned. Since the kingdom is in shambles right now, he asks them to keep a close watch on the prisoner. Out of nowhere, Meki attacks Frau, to her dismay. She became weak after the source of her power was taken. Against Meki's wishes, Sally helps her break out of the prison to escape her scheduled execution. While they are at it, Hawthorne chases after them until one cannon explodes, wiping the entire kingdom off the map. Episode 3. In what looks like a tournament, Hawthorne claims his victory against a rather weak opponent. While the trio looks unimpressed, the commander couldn't care less. Meki, now called Carrot, appears to have a change of heart as she starts to understand humans and their emotions. While walking outside the arena, Sally catches a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. After going through all the trouble of finding her friend, Sally finally reunites with Mikoto, while Sally assumes that Mikoto is participating in the tournament. The next scene reveals that it's Milia who's putting in all the effort to earn the prize. As it seems, she's the reason why Mikoto is nearly running on empty. Elsewhere, Sumeragi, a high-ranking ogre, is spotted walking down a church ruin with Juscelino. A mask ogre and an unnamed mid-ranked ogre, Sumeragi, announces an important gathering, and in a short while, numerous ogres emerge from the summoning circle. As their assembly begins, Sumeragi highlights a human called Peach Boy and his alarming impact on their declining population. While nearly everyone's nerves are on edge, a young ogre named Todoroki interrupts Sumeragi's speech, claiming that he is causing unnecessary confusion and inciting anxiety. Todoroki suggests taking advantage of their numbers to capture Peach Boy. That is, until Sumeragi reveals the decapitated head of Somanki, one of the Juscelino's puppets, stating that it was Peach Boy's doing. He even makes up a story about Meki getting tortured and murdered at the hands of the same person. Enraged by the death of his crush, Todoroki vows to kill Mikoto. While Hawthorne enters the battle arena, Sumeragi approaches Sally to discuss their goal of having humans and ogres coexist in peace. Soon afterward, Mikoto shows up and warns Sally that Sumeragi is an enemy. Torn between cooperating with an ogre and believing her friend's claim, Sally is caught up in a dilemma. Episode 4. The story shifts to a brief flashback as Princess Sally is seen running away from the royal guards. Later on, she runs into Mikoto, revealing their first encounter. With the desire to explore the outside world, Sally asked Mikoto to cover her up. By doing so, she rewarded her newfound friend with free meals and accommodation. While Sally gave Mikoto a quick tour of the place, he spoke about his journey as a traveler. Little did they know, an ogre named Yaki had crept into the castle, announcing that they would soon take over the kingdom. Upon leaving, Yaki's peripheral vision caught Mikoto by the courtyard. Terrified, he started to worry about his plan. Unaware that Mikoto noticed his presence, Yaki immediately left the castle, and so did he. Suddenly, the disturbance grew more apparent when the vicious ogres revealed themselves one by one. With the horrified Sally in the background, Mikoto lived up to his name as the Demon Hunter by slaughtering every ogre in his path. Judging by the noticeable bloodlust in his eyes, he took pleasure in killing his prey. After witnessing how Mikoto saved the kingdom, Sally did not know exactly what to feel, until he vanished from sight. A month later, Sally cut her hair and informed her father of her resolve. Much to her delight, the king granted her request and expressed his support for her endeavor to be a traveler. Episode 5. Back to the present, Sally and the others are seen heading to a town reportedly raising concerns among travelers and its own people. Apparently, there's an ongoing rumor that a vampire is on the loose. Once inside the town, they quickly notice that the people around them aren't fond of demi-humans. This gets the squad all worked up, particularly Carrot, who wishes to retrieve her powers so she can bid them good riddance. As she takes a stroll to clear her head, Carrot senses an ominous presence, putting an evil smirk on her face. Later that night, Carrot meets up with the owner of the familiar power, Kyuketsuki. Without beating around the bush, she requests him to slaughter the townspeople. Kyuketsuki then asks Carrot if she doesn't mind Sally joining the bloodless corpses. Just before Carrot mutters her answer, Frau shows up and reminds her of her foolishness. A one-on-one combat ensues, but with the huge difference in power, Frau gets beaten to a pulp. A while later, Sally arrives at the scene, but much to her horror, Frau has already met her maker. Fuming over the death of her friend, Sally gives the vampire a taste of his own medicine. He is then forced to use his ability to manipulate blood in a vain attempt to inflict damage on his opponent. As Sally puts it, the peach power makes her body resistant to ogre powers. Even so, Kyuketsuki takes advantage of her clothes and restrains her shortly after. As he's about to bite her flesh, Carrot stops him with her remaining power. As it seems, Frau has ascended to heaven. There, she's greeted by an angel named Atla, who later reveals that it is Frau's second death this year. After expressing her resolve, Atla not only revives Frau, but also bestows her with immense power. Back in one piece, Frau grows a black pair of wings, and, with quick work, she returns the favor to her killer. Episode 6. Upon waking up, Frau gets shocked to the core when Atla greets her. While Frau thinks that she died again, the angel tells her that she's visiting her in the mortal world. Before leaving, Atla retrieves her power from Frau to avoid standing out from the crowd and putting her companions in danger. Just as Hawthorne barges in to check on Frau, she returns to her normal form, all alone inside the room. In the meantime, Carrot and Sally go out to buy carrots for Frau. Coincidentally enough, they come across the same street vendor who made fun of Frau for being a demi-human. As the man continues to speak of their friend with contempt, Sally punches him very hard. After witnessing how she reacted to the situation, Carrot seems to have forgotten the animosity she felt when Sally admitted that she killed Set. At the same time, Alta runs into Kyuketsuki's soul, watching his physical body engulfed in flames. As the corpse slowly turns to ashes, Kyuketsuki begins his journey to the afterlife. The story jumps back in time when Mikoto and Dog confront a mysterious figure following their tracks. Surprisingly, their pursuer turns out to be a girl. Sporting a sister's habit, introducing herself as Milia, she confesses that she lost her memory and only remembers her name. Later that night, Mikoto attempts to take her life after finding that she's an ogre. He fails, however, when Dog steps in and knocks some sense into his head. The next day, the trio stumbles upon the nameless ogre who receives an order to capture Hatsuki, Milia herself. While she starts to remember her identity and regain some lost memories, the nameless ogre reminds her of pain as his sword cuts through her flesh. As the tension rises, Mikoto couldn't care less, claiming that whoever dies doesn't matter to him. Out of desperation, Milia pulls out her horn to send Mikoto the message that she's no longer an ogre. Ultimately, Milia manages to survive and becomes the third member of Mikoto's small circle. Episode 7. As the story continues with the previous events, it is revealed that Somenki's the one responsible for the Lost Kingdom. Upon learning that Sally killed Set, Somenki lashes out at her, only to be stopped by Sumeragi through telepathy. While the reason for sparing Sally's life remains unclear, Somenki leaves her to be. As Hawthorne laments the tragic fate of the kingdom he used to serve and the people he used to protect, Frau assures him that everything will soon fall into place. Elsewhere, Somenki visits Sumeragi to confront him about what happened. The latter reveals that had Somenki dared to ignore his orders, he would have ended up dead on the spot. Back inside the inn, Sally is greeted by one of Hawthorne's guards, Barrett, who survived the kingdom's destruction. After hearing the boy's story, Hawthorne reckons that the Witch of the Western Forest sent Barrett to the woods to save him. From one revelation to another, the next scene shows Sumeragi asking Carrot to carry out a mission. In exchange for retrieving her power and taking her life back as an ogre, she should keep an eye on Sally. Episode 8. Going back to Sally's dilemma, she finally picks her poison, and that is to stay by Mikoto's side. However, he hurriedly runs away after Sally takes his hand. Determined to work with Mikoto and understand his twisted side, Sally chases after him. As Mikoto lays all his cards on the table on why Sally should rethink her decision, an explosion goes off. It is then revealed that Todoroki, alongside Shinki, Basu, and a little kid named Daminki, have started to make their move. Following the ogre's sudden appearance is the cancellation of the tournament. Given the present circumstances, the capital offers a hefty reward to the participants who will bring an ogre's head to the table. Speaking of their target, Todoroki runs into Hawthorne, who almost got fried by lightning. It appears that there is a misunderstanding between them, as the young ogre believes that the former commander and Peach Boy are the same people. Having said that, Carrot finds out that the ogres are currently wreaking havoc in the kingdom. Mikoto, on the other hand, preys upon the sleeping Daminki, but strangely enough, he is rendered unconscious without the kid lifting a finger. While Frau, Sally, and Carrot somehow manage to hold out against their opponents, Hawthorne starts to accept his imminent death. Even so, he chooses to die with dignity. That is, until a woman named Winnie intervenes and blocks Todoroki's thunder cannon. Episode 9. This is the part where we get introduced to Hiko, the first Peach Boy who is seen saying goodbye to an elderly couple. Before he sets off on his journey, the old man hands him a katana paired with some dumplings. Later that day, Hiko comes across a hungry dog. And just like how Frau became Sally's loyal friend, Hiko meets his travel companion after giving it some food. While the new tandem talks about Hiko's wish to reunite with his real parents, an ogre suddenly appears, turning the village into pandemonium. As the gigantic creature feasts upon the villagers, Hiko musters enough courage to face the enemy. From acting all weak and timid, Hiko surprises the spectators as he cuts the ogre's body in two. After this incident, his heroic act spreads like wildfire. Consequently, Hiko's thirst for hunting more ogres consumes him. Putting the search for his parents out of the picture, Hiko even travels to the Ogre Island to kill every single one of them, which then leads to their leader's demise. Proclaimed as a hero, Hiko manages to bring peace across the land. It won't last long, however. One day, an ogre named Gaki shows up at his doorstep, claiming to have killed his human wife. Without any hesitation, Gaki asks Hiko to take his life, leaving him abandoned, his only child, Mikoto. After rescuing the young Mikoto, Hiko asks the kid to kill him just like how he killed his father. Enraged, Mikoto attempts to grant his request, only to fail miserably because he is weak. From then on, Hiko takes it upon himself to take care of the child and make him stronger. Days pass and Hiko finally meets the god of laws, Nobriga, who completely overwhelms the former as he lies on the ground, mortally wounded. Before Hiko breathes his last, he passes on the katana to its new owner, and his Peach Boy title to Mikoto, along with his power. In a snap, his successor turns the tide of battle in his favor, showing Nobriga no mercy until the ogre kicks the bucket. After avenging his master's death, Mikoto pulls out his horn. Episode 10. Back to Hawthorne's present ordeal, Winnie makes it clear that she has no intention of fighting whatsoever, and she only interrupted their duel to give Hawthorne a metal sword. And just like that, the two men resume their long-standing battle. Somewhere inside the kingdom turned to a whole battlefield. Frau refuses to back down as she gathers the remaining power left inside her body. Ultimately, she prevails over the colossal bird, joining her in victory as Carrot, who manages to defeat Shinky by letting him fall for her trick. At the same time, Sally finally passes through Sumeragi, who confesses that he's just testing her ability. With Hawthorne yet to showcase his main character moment, he decides to put all his faith in a single swing of his sword. To his surprise, he wins against a formidable opponent. Meanwhile, Mikoto wakes up in a heightened state of distress as he almost unleashes his power. Milia then explains that Mikoto is suffering so much because of Daminki, an ogre who can put anyone to sleep and give them nightmares. After finding out that Sumeragi lied about Meki's death, Todoroki confronts him. While Todoroki blames Sumeragi for the unnecessary bloodshed, the latter sends the kid to the afterlife to reunite with his friends. Episode 11. The story continues with Sally's party, together with Barrett, visiting a massive tree in the middle of the forest. As it appears, the tree hides a bar inside and a witch named Winnie. She then confesses that she's been watching them for quite some time now. With eyes beaming with excitement, Sally asks Winnie to teach her magic. Meanwhile, Hawthorne expresses his gratitude to her for saving one of his men. Despite getting rid of a high-ranked ogre, Sally believes she's utterly useless in battle since she can't freely activate her peach power. And so, Sally asks Hawthorne to teach her how to wield a sword. With the threat lurking in the shadows, they decide to stay the night. Later that night, it is revealed that Frau and Winnie have known each other for years. After receiving a wooden mallet from Winnie, Frau begs her longtime friend to teach Sally magic. In exchange for a whopping amount of money, Winnie finally decides to be Sally's teacher. Unaware that she holds immense power, Sally continues her training like a normal adventurer. After her swordsmanship training with Hawthorne, an elf and a lizard folk walk in to ask Winnie for a favor, and that is to remove, or more accurately, kill the sealed-off ogre. Later on, Hawthorne's gut feelings kick in as he confronts the leader of the elves about his true intentions behind working with the lizard folk. The elves' sworn enemies. While the leader admits his plan to abandon the humanoid lizards, Hatsuki walks straight out of the seal and announces to kill them all. Infuriated by the sight of Meki getting along with the humans, Hatsuki charges at Sally using her hair, leaving Frau to react quickly to her defense. While they're at it, Juki, a tree ogre, finally gets revived. From a distance, Sumeragi and Somenki are spotted watching how the former's pawn carries out her mission to unseal Juki. The two then notice a lone traveler nearby, which instantly sends Somenki into a frenzy. That is, until his carelessness leads him to lose his head. Literally. At that moment, Sumeragi finally meets the demon hunter himself, Mikoto. With the sudden turn of events, the different species end up working together to protect the forest. There and then, Sally announces to stop the battle and make peace instead. Episode 12. Displeased with her suggestion, Juki lectures Sally about her ignorance of the ogres. As the ogre tree claims, they're made of human hatred. Refusing to just die and bury her purpose, Sally breaks free from Juki's grip and takes full control of her power. Or so she thought. Just like Mikoto, the peach eye forces her to kill an ogre. Fortunately, she manages to fight the urge and not go berserk. She takes advantage of the precarious situation and forces Hatsuki and Juki to make peace or else get a taste of her power. Soon afterwards, Sally drops the peace talks and lets her fist savor the trouble, while she gives Hatsuki another shot at life. She sends Juki to his demise. The next day, Sally can't help but feel extremely happy when a human, a demi-human, and an elf welcome her sight. Even then, she knows that constantly running into ogres is not a chance encounter anymore. Now that Sally is aware that someone's after her, she decides to leave the place for the sake of the innocent lives around her. Despite the threat that has become Sally's constant companion in her adventurer's life, Hawthorne, Frau, and Carrot don't seem to mind getting dragged into her mess. Hence, they set forth for another adventure. If you love this story, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel to get more such recaps. Thanks for watching.